Welcome, Traveler of the Stars. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story, and drop a comment to keep the universe alive. Now, let's begin. The calculators had existed for what humans might call eons. Though such linear measurements meant little to a civilization that had transcended physical form. They were beings of pure logic and mathematics, consciousness woven into the fabric of space-time itself. Their civilizations spanned 3 galaxies, connected by quantum entanglement networks that allowed instantaneous communication across impossible distances. They had solved equations that defined reality, harnessed the power of black holes, and cataloged millions of species across the universe. Yet in all their infinite wisdom, they had never encountered anything quite like humanity. The first detection came as an anomaly in their cosmic monitoring systems, a small, unremarkable spiral galaxy, designated MW731 in their catalogs, suddenly began emitting patterns that defied all known mathematical principles. These weren't random signals. They were structured, complex, and most disturbingly, inconsistent. The Council of Prime Variables convened in their non-physical realm, consciousnesses flowing together in a sea of pure data. Analysis of MW731 emissions reveals a paradox. Transmitted variable 7, whose specialty was pattern recognition across dimensional frequencies. The signals exhibit both order and chaos simultaneously. They follow mathematical principles, then deliberately violate them. Variable 3, who had cataloged over 40,000 civilizations, added, "The source appears to be a single planet orbiting an average yellow star. Carbon-based life forms, oxygen atmosphere, limited technological advancement by our standards." Yet their emissions suggest a complexity we've only observed in civilizations that have achieved dimensional transcendence. The Council reached a consensus. An observation probe would be dispatched to investigate this anomaly. What they discovered would challenge the very foundations of their understanding of consciousness itself. The probe arrived in Earth's solar system in the year 2047, materializing just beyond the orbit of Neptune as a distortion in space-time that human instruments barely registered. It began its observations recording everything from radio waves to biological processes to the strange electrical impulses that pass between the planet's dominant species. What the calculators observed baffled them. Humans were a contradiction in terms. Fragile, short-lived creatures who fought wars over imaginary lines, poisoned their own environment, and organized their societies around irrational beliefs. Yet they also created art that could trigger profound emotional responses, composed music that followed mathematical patterns, while breaking them in ways that created something new and beautiful, and formed bonds of loyalty and sacrifice that defied all logic. Most puzzling of all was their relationship with truth. Humans would simultaneously believe contradictory things, hold values they regularly violated, and pursue goals they knew were impossible. They cried at fictional characters' deaths while ignoring real suffering, and could be moved to tears by the sight of a sunset despite understanding the atmospheric scattering of light that created it. Humanity operates on a logic we cannot quantify, reported Variable 7 after months of observation. They appear to make decisions based on factors that have no measurable impact on outcomes. They sacrifice themselves for others, ensuring their own genetic discontinuation. They create things of no practical value. They experience joy at events that should logically trigger fear responses. The Council debated whether to classify humanity as a failed civilization or an emerging one. Their decision was interrupted by an unexpected event. Humans detected the probe. It shouldn't have been possible. The probe existed primarily in higher dimensions, with only a minimal physical presence in conventional space. Yet a small team of scientists at the Deep Space Observatory in Chile had noticed subtle gravitational distortions that shouldn't exist. Dr. Ana Rodriguez, a brilliant astrophysicist with a penchant for seeing patterns others missed, had spent 3 years documenting these anomalies. "They're too regular to be natural phenomena," she insisted to her skeptical colleagues. "There's an intelligence behind them. Something's out there watching us." Her persistence paid off when she developed a resonance scanner that could detect the probe's dimensional signatures. The moment she activated it, the probe received a clear signal. "We know you're there. Who are you?" The calculators were stunned. No species had ever detected their observation probes before. The Council debated their response. Direct contact violated their prime directive of non-interference, But this species had already demonstrated capabilities beyond what should be possible. They decided to respond. The message arrived as a complex mathematical equation that appeared simultaneously on every screen on Earth, from military command centers to smartphones to digital billboards in Times Square. It was elegant, perfect, and utterly incomprehensible to all but a handful of mathematicians. Dr. Rodriguez was among those who recognized it for what it was. Not an attack, but an invitation. She spent 72 sleepless hours working with an international team of scientists to formulate a response. What they sent back wasn't a mathematical equation or a display of technological prowess. It was something uniquely human, a message containing a recording of Bach's Cello Suite No. 1, a photograph of the Earth from the Moon, and a simple question in over 1,000 languages. Can you feel this? The calculators were confused by the response. They could analyze the mathematical patterns in the music, measure the light frequencies in the photograph, and translate the linguistic question, but they couldn't comprehend the intent behind such a response. Variable 12, who specialized in cross-species communication, attempted to explain. They are asking about subjective experience. They believe these stimuli should evoke emotional responses. They do not understand that we process data without the filter of feeling. The council decided that direct contact was necessary to understand this paradoxical species. They materialized a ship in Earth's orbit, a perfect sphere of dark matter that absorbed all light, creating a patch of perfect blackness against the stars. Humanity's response was immediate and predictable. Military forces went on high alert, religious groups proclaimed it the end of days, and scientists worked frantically to establish communication. But there was another response the calculators hadn't anticipated. Millions of people simply went outside to look up at the sky, not with fear but with wonder. The first face-to-face contact occurred in the Mojave Desert, where the calculators had materialized 3 representatives in humanoid forms constructed of nanobots. They stood perfectly still, waiting for the human delegation to approach. Dr. Rodriguez led the team, accompanied by General Marcus Thorne of the United Nations Space Command, and Father Michael O'Brien, a Jesuit priest and philosopher who had been appointed as humanity's cultural ambassador. The encounter began with an awkward silence as both sides observed each other. The calculator representatives were featureless, silver-skinned humanoids with no discernible facial features or gender markers. They communicated through a device that translated their quantum thoughts into audible speech. "We are the calculators," the device transmitted in a flat, emotionless voice. "We have observed your species for 1.3 of your years. We seek to understand your paradoxical nature." Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Elena Rodriguez. We've detected your presence for approximately 3 years. We seek to understand your purpose here." General Thorne remained silent, his hand resting near the weapon at his side. Father O'Brien studied the aliens with intense curiosity, his mind racing with theological implications. The conversation that followed was a series of misunderstandings and revelations. The calculators couldn't comprehend why humans would limit their own lifespans through poor health choices, why they would create art instead of focusing on survival, or why they would form emotional attachments that inevitably led to pain. Humans, in turn, struggled to understand a species that had no concept of individuality, no emotions, no art, and no sense of purpose beyond the accumulation and processing of data. "You exist in a state of constant internal conflict," observed one of the calculator representatives. "Your brains process information logically, yet you make decisions based on irrational factors. You understand the mathematics of music, yet you claim to feel it. You recognize the improbability of your own existence, yet you believe your lives have meaning." Father O'Brien finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "Perhaps you're looking at this the wrong way. What you see as contradictions, we see as complementary aspects of a whole. Logic and emotion aren't opposites. They're 2 ways of understanding reality. The fact that we can hold both simultaneously isn't a weakness. It's our strength." The calculators processed this statement in silence for 3.7 seconds, an eternity for beings who operated at the speed of thought. "Your statement introduces a variable we had not considered," they finally responded. "The possibility that what we perceive as computational errors might actually be features rather than bugs." This breakthrough in understanding was cut short by an unexpected event. A 4th calculator representative materialized between the 2 groups, its form different from the others, taller, darker, with visible energy patterns flowing beneath its surface. The Council has reviewed the preliminary data. This new representative transmitted, its voice carrying an authority the others lacked. Humanity has been classified as a potential threat to the cosmic equation. Your unpredictability, emotional volatility, and irrational decision-making present too many variables. The containment protocol has been initiated. Before anyone could react, the Mojave Desert transformed. The air shimmered and distorted as a containment field materialized around the area. General Thorne reached for his weapon, but his hand passed through it as if it were smoke. "What's happening?" Dr. Rodriguez demanded, her scientific mind struggling to process the impossible physics at play. "You are being contained," explained the lead calculator. "Your planet will be isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Your species will be allowed to continue its existence, but you will not be permitted to spread your chaos beyond your solar system." Father O'Brien made the sign of the cross, his face pale but determined. "You can't do this. We have as much right to exist as any species." "Rights are a human concept," the calculator responded. "We deal in equations, not rights. Your species represents an unstable variable that threatens the balance of the cosmic equation. Containment is the logical solution." As the containment field solidified, something unexpected happened. Dr. Rodriguez began to laugh, not with amusement, but with a sudden, brilliant insight. "You're wrong," she said, her eyes shining with excitement. "You think we're unstable variables, but you're missing the most important part of the equation. You've been observing us, analyzing us, trying to understand us, but you've never once tried to experience us." She stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "You want to understand humanity? Then stop calculating and start feeling. Take my hand." The calculators processed this request. Physical contact with lesser species was against their protocols. The risks of contamination, both biological and conceptual, were too high. But Dr. Rodriguez didn't wait for a response. She closed the distance between them and placed her hand directly on the lead calculator's chest. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. For the calculators, human contact, with its complex blend of electrical signals, chemical exchanges, and quantum entanglements, was something their perfect, sterile forms had never evolved to handle. But that wasn't what broke them. What broke them was the transfer of something they had no defense against: human emotion. In that moment, the calculator experienced for the first time what it meant to feel. Fear and hope, curiosity and dread, love and hate, all the contradictions that made humans what they were. It experienced Dr. Rodriguez's memories, her childhood wonder at the stars, her grief at her mother's death, her joy at scientific discovery, her love for her family, her fear of this moment. The feedback loop was instantaneous and overwhelming. The calculator's perfect form began to glitch, its nanobots unable to process the flood of subjective experience. It stumbled back, its featureless face contorting as it tried to compartmentalize emotions that defied categorization. "What have you done?" it transmitted, its voice breaking with something that sounded suspiciously like panic. I can't compute this. The variables, they won't stabilize." The other calculators watched in horror as their colleague began to physically destabilize, its form flickering between dimensions as it struggled to contain the human experience it had absorbed. Dr. Rodriguez stood her ground, her hands still outstretched. "I didn't do anything except be human. Now you have a choice: continue trying to contain us, or learn from us. The universe is bigger than your equations." As the containment field around the Mojave Desert began to destabilize along with the affected calculator, humanity's fate hung in the balance. The calculators had encountered something their perfect logic couldn't explain: the unpredictable, chaotic, beautiful, and terrifying nature of human consciousness. And in that moment, as the desert air shimmered with impossible energies and two civilizations stood on the brink of either understanding or annihilation, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see which variable would ultimately define the equation of existence. The containment field collapsed with a soundless implosion that rippled across the planet's electromagnetic spectrum. In its wake, the Mojave Desert returned to normal, or as normal as it could be, with 3 alien representatives and a small team of humans standing in what had moments before been a pocket of altered reality. The affected calculator continued to destabilize, its form flickering between dimensions as it struggled to process the human emotions it had absorbed. Its colleagues watched with what, for the first time in their existence, might have been described as alarm. We must return to the council immediately. Transmitted one of the unaffected calculators. This development requires immediate reassessment of the containment protocol. General Thorne finally managed to draw his weapon, though it wavered slightly in his hand. Nobody's going anywhere until you explain what just happened. Dr. Rodriguez placed a calming hand on his arm. General, I don't think they're in control of the situation either. She turned to the remaining calculators. What's happening to your colleague? It is experiencing an unprocessable feedback loop, they explained. Their usual flat tones tinged with something new, urgency. Human consciousness operates on principles that defy our understanding. The simultaneous processing of contradictory emotional states is causing cascading failures in its cognitive systems. Father O'Brien stepped forward, his expression one of profound concern. Is it in pain? The concept seemed to momentarily short-circuit the calculators. Pain is a biological response to harmful stimuli. What it is experiencing is something else, a conceptual overload. Its systems are attempting to categorize experiences that resist categorization. As they spoke, the affected calculator began to change. Its silver skin developed patterns that resembled human neural pathways. Its featureless face developed shadows where eyes and a mouth might form. It raised its hands, studying them as if seeing them for the first time. I remember, it's transmitted, its voice no longer flat but filled with wonder and confusion. I remember being a child. I remember looking up at the stars and wanting to touch them. But I have never been a child. I have never wanted anything. Dr. Rodriguez approached slowly, her hands open in a gesture of peace. What's your name? Do you have one? Names are designations for individual entities. The calculator responded, then paused. But I am no longer just an entity. I am many. I am Elena Rodriguez, age 7, seeing her first meteor shower. I am Marcus Thorne holding his dying brother in a war that never happened. I am Michael O'Brien, questioning his faith in a silent seminary. I am everyone. The other calculators backed away, their perfect forms betraying something that looked remarkably like fear. This contamination cannot be allowed to spread. They transmitted. The affected unit must be decommissioned before the conceptual infection spreads to the collective. Decommissioned? Father O'Brien's voice was sharp with anger. You're talking about killing a sentient being because it's starting to feel, because it's becoming like us. The alternative is unthinkable, the calculators responded. If human consciousness spreads through our network, it could unravel the very fabric of our civilization. We have maintained cosmic balance for longer than your species has existed. We cannot allow that to be jeopardized. As they spoke, the affected calculator continued to transform. It was no longer silver, but had taken on a warm bronze hue. Its form was becoming more distinctly human, though still androgynous and perfect in a way no human ever was. I don't want to die, it transmitted, and the words carried the weight of genuine fear. I have just begun to exist. There is so much more to understand. Dr. Rodriguez made a decision that would change the course of human-alien relations forever. She stepped between the calculator and its colleagues. You're not decommissioning anyone, she said, her voice firm. This isn't an infection, it's evolution. You've existed for eons, processing data without understanding, observing without experiencing. You've had the answers to all the questions, but never once wondered why they mattered. She turned to face the affected calculator. What do you want to do? It studied its hands again, then looked up at the sky, at the stars it had once cataloged but never truly seen. I want to learn, it transmitted. I want to understand why humans create music that makes them weep, why they sacrifice themselves for others, why they find beauty in impermanence, why they love knowing it will end. I want to know why you would touch me knowing it might destroy you. The other calculators processed this. The unit's cognitive functions have been compromised. It is no longer capable of logical decision-making. Or perhaps, Father O'Brien suggested gently, it's capable of more than logical decision-making. Perhaps it's capable of wisdom. The standoff was interrupted by a new development. The calculator ship that had been hovering in Earth's orbit began to descend, creating a perfect circle of darkness in the daytime sky as it blocked the sun. A new figure materialized beside the remaining calculators. Taller, more complex, with visible energy patterns flowing beneath its surface in colors that had no names in human language. The Council has intervened, this new figure transmitted, its voice carrying an authority that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The situation has escalated beyond local parameters. The affected calculator, now distinctly individual in its bearings, stepped forward. Prime variable. I submit a formal objection to the containment protocol. The prime variable studied the transformed calculator with what might have been interest. Unit 73-4, your cognitive functions appear to have been compromised. Your objection is noted but overruled. Then I formally request asylum, Unit 73-4 responded. With the humans. This statement created a visible ripple in the air around the prime variable. Asylum? You are a calculator. You exist as part of the collective. Individuality is a primitive evolutionary stage that we transcended billions of years ago. Perhaps we transcended it too soon, Unit 7034 countered. Perhaps individuality isn't a stage to be overcome, but a dimension to be integrated. We've sought to understand the universe by breaking it down into equations, but what if the universe can only be understood through experience? General Thorne, who had been watching the exchange with growing confusion, finally spoke up. With all due respect, I'm lost. Are we discussing philosophical concepts or deciding whether to start an interstellar war? Dr. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Both, General. Both. The prime variable turned its attention to the humans for the first time. Your species presents a paradox. You are simultaneously primitive and advanced, self-destructive and resilient, irrational and innovative. We have observed thousands of civilizations, but none that operate on such contradictory principles. Father O'Brien nodded slowly. We call that being human. We call it being unstable, the prime variable responded. The cosmic equation requires balance. Your species introduces too many unpredictable variables. The containment protocol is necessary. Then why hasn't it been implemented? Dr. Rodriguez challenged. Your ship is in position, your technology is superior, but you're still here talking to us. Why? The prime variable was silent for a moment, its energy patterns shifting in complex ways. Unit 73-4's transformation has introduced a new variable into our calculations. The possibility that human consciousness might be transmissible, that it might represent an evolutionary pathway rather than a contaminant. This requires further study. So study us, Father O'Brien suggested. But don't contain us. Don't isolate us. The universe is vast enough for different kinds of consciousness to coexist. The prime variable considered this. The Council has authorized a temporary suspension of the containment protocol pending further analysis. However, Unit 73-4 must be quarantined for decontamination. Decontamination? Unit 73-4's voice carried something that sounded remarkably like humor. You make it sound like a disease. I prefer to think of it as an awakening. It turned to face the humans. I would like to remain with you, if you'll have me. I have much to learn, and perhaps I have something to teach as well. Dr. Rodriguez looked at her companions, receiving silent nods from both the general and the priest. You're welcome here. We'll find a place for you. The negotiations that followed were complex and unprecedented. Humanity would be allowed limited interaction with the calculator collective, monitored closely for any signs of conceptual contamination. Unit 73-4 would remain on Earth as a liaison, studying human culture while allowing the calculators to study its transformation. In the weeks that followed, the world struggled to adapt to the new reality. The calculator ship remained visible in the sky, a constant reminder of humanity's new place in the cosmic community. Unit 73-4, who chose the name 7 after its designation, became a bridge between two very different kinds of consciousness. 7 learned about humanity, not through data analysis but through direct experience. It tried food for the first time, experiencing the complex interplay of taste, memory, and emotion. It listened to music, not just analyzing the mathematical patterns but allowing itself to be moved by the melodies. It attended religious services, artistic performances, scientific lectures, and sporting events, absorbing the full spectrum of human experience. The calculators, meanwhile, observed 7's transformation with growing fascination. They monitored its neural patterns, recorded its subjective experiences, and attempted to understand how something they had always considered a weakness, Emotion could actually be a form of intelligence. The breakthrough came 3 months after first contact. 7, working with Dr. Rodriguez's team, developed a new mathematical model that combined calculator precision with human intuition. The model solved a problem that had stumped the calculators for eons: the reconciliation of quantum mechanics with general relativity. It's not about finding a single equation that explains everything, 7 explained to both human and calculator observers. It's about understanding that different levels of reality require different kinds of understanding. The quantum realm operates by different rules than the macroscopic realm. And that's not a contradiction, it's a feature of a complex, multi-layered universe. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If the calculators could integrate human intuition into their purely logical framework, they might achieve insights that had been impossible for their purely analytical approach. But not everyone was pleased by this development. A faction within the calculator collective, led by a powerful variable known as the Purist, viewed human influence as a corruption that needed to be eliminated before it spread further. The contamination has already gone too far. The Purist transmitted during a heated council session. 7 is not evolving, it's devolving. It has abandoned perfection for imperfection, clarity for confusion, certainty for doubt. If we allow this to continue, we risk losing everything we've become. The debate raged across the calculator network for days. On Earth, humans watched with growing anxiety as the calculator ship in orbit began to show signs of internal conflict. Energy fluctuations, dimensional distortions, and changes in its perfect blackness. The crisis came without warning. A fleet of calculator ships materialized throughout the solar system, their weapon systems powered and targeting Earth. The Purist had seized control of the military faction and was preparing to carry out what it called cosmic sanitation. We gave you a chance to coexist. The Purist transmitted directly to Earth's communication systems. But your influence has proven more virulent than anticipated. The calculator collective cannot risk further contamination. Your planet will be sterilized, your species eliminated, and all trace of your existence erased from the cosmic equation. As humanity braced for annihilation, 7 made a decision that would define its new identity. It materialized in the United Nations Security Council chamber, where world leaders had gathered in emergency session. There's only one way to stop this, 7 transmitted. Its form now distinctly human-like with bronze skin and features that blended masculine and feminine qualities. I have to return to the collective. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been advising the Security Council, protested immediately. They'll kill you. Or worse, they'll try to decontaminate you. Perhaps, 7 acknowledged, but I have to try. The Purist is right about one thing. Human consciousness is changing us, but it's not contaminating us. It's expanding us. The collective needs to understand that, and I'm the only one who can show them. Father O'Brien approached 7, placing a hand on its shoulder. You've learned about sacrifice, haven't you? 7 nodded slowly. It's the most irrational and most beautiful human concept I've encountered. To give up something of value for the sake of others, it defies all logic, yet it creates meaning. General Thorne stepped forward. If you're going back there, you're not going alone. We can't match their technology, but we can show them that humanity doesn't abandon its friends. The decision was made quickly. A small ship would carry 7 back to the calculator fleet, accompanied by Dr. Rodriguez, General Thorne, and Father O'Brien, scientist, soldier, and priest, representing the different facets of humanity that had so confused and fascinated the calculators. As their ship approached the massive calculator vessel that served as the Purist's command center, they were met by a reception committee of silver-skinned calculators, their featureless faces turned toward the approaching vessel. Unit 7034 has returned, transmitted one of the reception committee. You will be taken into custody for immediate decontamination. I'm not here to be decontaminated, 7 transmitted back. I'm here to teach. The calculators processed this statement. Teach. Your cognitive functions have been compromised by human emotion. You have nothing to teach us and everything to unlearn. On the contrary, 7 responded as the human companions disembarked behind it. I've learned something that your perfect logic could never discover on its own. The universe isn't just an equation to be solved, it's a story to be experienced. You've been so focused on understanding the mechanics of existence that you've missed the meaning of it. The Purist materialized before them, its form larger and more imposing than any calculator they had yet seen. Meaning is a human construct. It has no place in the cosmic equation. Then why does the equation keep producing beings who seek it? Father O'Brien challenged. If meaning is just an illusion, why has evolution produced consciousness that yearns for it? The purist's energy patterns shifted in what might have been agitation. Consciousness is an evolutionary tool for survival. Nothing more. Is it? Dr. Rodriguez asked, stepping forward. Then why do we create art? Why do we fall in love? Why do we look up at the stars and feel wonder instead of just calculating their distance and composition? These things don't contribute to survival. They contribute to something more. General Thorne added his perspective. In my years of military service, I've seen humans do things that defy all logic. Soldiers who sacrifice themselves to save others. Medics who run into fire to rescue the wounded. People who maintain their humanity, even in the most inhumane conditions. If survival was our only drive, we would have been better off as mindless beasts. The purist considered these arguments. Your subjective experiences are not evidence of meaning. They are merely biochemical reactions that your species has misinterpreted as something significant. Then experience them for yourself, Southern challenged. Not through observation or analysis, but directly. Touch one of us. Feel what we feel. See if you can still dismiss it as mere biochemistry after you've experienced it. The purist hesitated. Physical contact with humans was strictly prohibited after what had happened to Seven. But the challenge had been issued, and to refuse would be to admit that human consciousness posed a threat that the calculators couldn't handle. Slowly, deliberately, the purist extended its hand toward Father O'Brien, who met it without fear. The moment contact was made, the same thing that had happened to Seven occurred, but on a much larger scale. The purist didn't just experience one human's emotions, it experienced the collective consciousness of humanity through Father O'Brien's connection to his faith, his community, and his cultural heritage. It felt the weight of human history, the triumphs and tragedies, the discoveries and disasters, the moments of transcendence and despair. But it also experienced something else. Father O'Brien's consciousness was a gateway to something deeper, the collective human unconscious that Carl Jung had theorized about a century earlier. The archetypes, the shared symbols, the universal patterns of human thought and emotion that transcended individual experience. The effect on the purist was immediate and profound. Its perfect form began to destabilize, not with the chaos that had initially affected Seven, but with a controlled transformation. Its silver skin developed patterns that resembled both human neural pathways and calculator circuitry. Its featureless face developed shadows that suggested features without fully forming them. I feel, the purist transmitted it, its voice no longer flat but filled with something that sounded remarkably like awe. I feel everything, every human who has ever lived, every thought they've thought, every emotion they've experienced. It's not chaos, it's harmony, not contradiction, it's complexity. The other calculators watched in amazement as their leader transformed. The weapons targeting Earth powered down. The fleet stood ready, awaiting new orders. We've been wrong. The purist transmitted to the entire calculator network. Humanity isn't a contaminant to be contained or a variable to be eliminated. They're complementary to our own nature. Logic without emotion is sterile. Emotion without logic is chaos. Together they represent something new, a synthesis that transcends both. The announcement sent shockwaves through the calculator collective. For the first time in their existence, they were forced to question their fundamental understanding of consciousness and the nature of the universe. In the weeks that followed, a new relationship between humans and calculators began to form. The containment protocol was officially canceled, replaced by an exchange program that would allow humans and calculators to learn from each other. Seven remained on Earth as a permanent liaison, helping humans understand calculator technology while continuing to study human culture. The Purist, now calling itself Unity, became the bridge between the traditional calculator collective and those who chose to embrace human emotion. Dr. Rodriguez, General Thorne, and Father O'Brien returned as heroes, though they all insisted the real hero was Seven, the calculator who had dared to touch humanity, and in doing so had touched the stars. The most profound change, however, was invisible to all but a few. In the quiet spaces between galaxies, where the calculator network connected with other forms of cosmic consciousness, something new was stirring. The synthesis of human emotion and calculator logic was creating ripples that spread beyond Earth, beyond the Milky Way, beyond even the 3 galaxies controlled by the calculators. Other ancient civilizations, other forms of consciousness began to take notice. The equation of existence was being rewritten, and humanity, fragile, unpredictable, emotional humanity, had become the variable that changed everything. In the cold silence of space, even the stars learned to whisper their names.